Hey y'all, GetMeowth here. New expansion hype! Yes! It's the Hogwarts and Hearthstone crossover episode that I didn't know I needed in my life until now, and now that it's here, I need it. I need it to hurry up and release. We've got so many brand new things to talk about, new card mechanics, new keywords, and 15 new cards to review today. But before we get started, two things. Okay, first off, make sure you click that subscribe button so that you guys know when videos like this come out in the future. It's free and it supports me a lot. Plus, you get notifications, right? That's the big deal. So you don't have to sit there and refresh every day. Now you'll get a little push notification on your phone when it goes live. And I'm also running a giveaway for the Scholomance Academy bundle. It's free to enter. All you got to do is follow me on Twitter and retweet the tweet. It's very simple. All right, and you can find a link to that down in the description below. All right, and of course, I would like to hear your thoughts and ideas about all of the cards that we're going to talk about today. Which ones are you excited about? Which ones do you think I'm wrong about? And what decks are you excited to try them in? Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, you remember those tri-class cards that we got from Mean Streets of Gadgetzan way back when? Feels like forever ago. But those were really cool. They shaped the meta, right? But we only got 9 of them. And those 9 had a huge impact on the metagame, right? And so we're kind of returning to that in a new fashion with dual class cards in Scholomance Academy. And so each class in Hearthstone is going to be paired with 2 other classes, resulting in 10 pairings. And each of those 10 pairings are going to have 4 cards, with one of them being a legendary. So here's to hoping that they're as meta-defining as the tri-class cards were, without being stupid overpowered. But, looking at the couple that we've seen already, that might be a little bit too much to ask for. And because I've actually been playing a lot of Magic in my free time, I'm really, really excited for this kind of class overlap and crossover because, they redefined kind of the class identities. And this kind of allows them to combine and mix some of these class identities for some new interactions and kind of mechanics that we might not have seen before in certain classes. So I'm really excited for them. I hope they're going to be powerful. I hope they're going to make an impact in Wild. I just hope that they're not going to be nerfed within the first 2 days. But yeah, in other words, get it? Because we're going to talk about keywords now. We've got the 2 new keywords, spellburst and studies. So spellburst is a one-time only effect when you cast a spell. And so when a spellburst minion, or maybe a weapon, we don't know yet, when one of those are in play and you cast a spell, you activate its spellburst effect. And so this is great in combination with mainly cheap spells for extra value off the cheap spells, or cheap minions in combination with expensive spells to get duplicate copies, right? And I might also be looking at these spellburst minions as just decently statted minions and archetypes that might need them that allow you the threat or the ability to generate extra value. So personally, when I'm just looking at this effect, I'm mainly going to be leaning towards those cheap minions or weapons that have a pretty strong or relevant spellburst effect, whereas those minions can hold their own, but if you have a cheap spell to interact with it, you get the additional benefit. And so that's what I'm leaning for, but maybe we'll see some big expensive spellburst card or legendary that's going to be not included in a lot of decks. We don't know, but I think spellburst itself is a really, really cool mechanic, and I'm looking forward to playing with it. Studies. So these studies are very similar to a card we've kind of already seen in Haunting Visions for Shaman. Essentially what you get to do is you get to discover a specific card, and then you get a reduction on the next kind of card that you play. And so Haunting Visions saw fringe play, and I think these are going to be a lot more playable in general because currently, as I understand it, that these discounts carry over. So I believe that they do, and I hope that they do. And so if they do, I think these cards actually have a lot of potential as like a pseudo Emperor Thorson effect, right? So like, for example, kind of a spoiler alert, but Nature Studies is one of the cards that's been revealed for Druid, so it's one-man discover spell. That's like a Raven Idol that never really saw play, but what it does is it allows your next spell to be discounted. Okay, so that means cheaper overgrowths, cheaper UIs, cheaper spreading plagues, who knows? The big potential in these cards, yes, Discover is nice, but the big potential is going to be the potential discount effects that we might be seeing in combination with some other powerful cards. And now let's go ahead and get on to the card review, probably the reason that most of you guys are here. And so just a reminder that I'm going to be reviewing all of these cards with Wild in mind. Okay, so some of these are probably going to be busted in Standard, but they might not just be playing Wild because of, the drastic power level difference between Wild and Standard. Alright, so starting us off, we've got Lightning Bloom. This is a dual class Shaman and Druid card. 0 mana, gain 2 mana crystals. Overload 2. So you guys remember when they had to nerf Innervate because it was one of the best cards in Hearthstone? Yeah, so they've kind of reprinted it. So with the downside of Overload 2, but in Shaman that can also be upside, right? This card is absolutely nuts. I don't think that comes as a surprise to many of you. The first two decks that are immediately springing to mind are something like Aggro Shaman and Combo Druids. You've probably seen at this point Tunnel Trog into Coin, Lightning Bloom, 4 mana 7/7. Yeah, it's kind of dumb, right? I'm actually kind of scared of this card, to be honest with you. I think this is an absolutely busted card, even in Wild, maybe especially in Wild because of some of the power swings that this might enable. And I think Combo Druid is, just as obvious of an inclusion potentially. This card is just absolutely nuts, and I'm actually personally expecting it to get nerfed at some point in time in the future, this card. Yikes. Next up, we've got Devolving Missiles. This is a Shaman and Mage dual class card. 1 mana, shoot 3 missiles that devolve minions. So my first question, does this scale with spell power? And if it does kind of interact like unexpected results, it's even more bonkers than it already is. I already think this is just a strong card. It probably sees play in Odd Shaman, an actually fringe viable deck. And while I'm not personally confident that this fits into Quest Mage, because I don't know if there's space in Quest Mage, not because Quest Mage doesn't want it, but because I don't know if there's space. But Quest Mage is going to love to discover into this card, right? Both against aggro decks and as a way to get through Q block boards. Q block's one of the best matchups into Quest Mage. We've already seen an increase in Quest Mage following the last set of nerfs. And if, the ability of Quest Mage to generate this off of Magic Trick or Glyph or Evocation against a Q block board when they're pushing for lethal, it's going to be very annoying, isn't it? But because of that, I think it'll definitely see play in Wild, definitely in Odd Shaman, maybe an aggressive Shaman deck, and definitely one of the cards that you're going to be discovering willingly the most in Quest Mage, I feel like, in certain matchups. And next up, we've got Wand Thief, another dual class card, Mage and Rogue. This is a 1 mana 1/2 with combo Discover a Mage spell. This is another just solid card. I just love these solid cards because it allows people to think about the cards that they're putting in their deck. For example, Burger Rogue probably wants this card. Quest Mage, I think, might actually want this card because ideally you are cutting down on spells on that deck and you are just trying to run as many minions that generate spells as you can. And I think we've seen in the past multiple times that 1 mana cards that generate resources have always proven to be strong. I don't know if there's space in Quest Mage, but I think you might want to find space for this card in Quest Mage. I think both classes are going to entertain the idea of running this card, kind of regardless of the archetype. It's like Pharaoh Cat maybe with a little bit more upside depending on the deck that you're trying to play. I think I'm seeing a couple of potential buffs here for Quest Mage. Yay! But Wand Thief, I think, is a very good card, and we'll see play in Wild. Alright, the next card I want to talk about is Cult Neophyte. This is a neutral 2 mana 3/2 with a battle cry. Your opponent's spells cost 1 more next turn. I actually really like this card. It's a mini Loatheb effect. Mini. Right? It's only 1 instead of 5, but you can run 2 of these in an aggressive deck. While this won't be good in slower decks, like the arena decks that currently run Loatheb, as a way to kind of seal out the opponent from disrupting their board, I think this is more just going to be akin to the effect of mana burn in aggressive decks like even Shaman, as a way to kind of stall like Dark Skies or Defile or a Mass Hysteria or Coin Scream. I'm really happy we're getting more disruption effects in Hearthstone. I think you're looking at this card if you're an aggressive deck that's not an odd deck, especially if Quest Mage is popular. You're probably wanting to fit 2 of these into your aggressive decks. Alright, next up is a card that we already kind of talked about, but we got Nature's Studies. 1 mana, discover a spell, your next one costs 1 less. So the card itself isn't too exciting, like we talked about. It's like 1/2 of a Raven Idol, which is never seen play in Wild. But I think the reason that this might see play is a spell discount, right? Especially if it's carrying over to the next turn. And so there's definitely ways that Druid, can take advantage of this, whether, like we talked about earlier, turn 3 overgrowth, earlier spreading plagues, earlier UIs, or overflows, even potentially discounts for a Kael'thas pop-off. There are definitely ways to take advantage of this if you're a Druid player. I definitely think you're going to have to be a little bit wary about how you're building your deck, but in the right kind of deck, you're probably going to want this. And so next up, let's talk about the first legendary card that we have seen so far, Shando Wildclaw. So this is a Hunter and Druid dual class card. It's a 3-mana 3/3 with choose one. Give your beast in your deck +1/+1, or transform into a copy of a friendly beast. So it's essentially a Keleseth effect for beast on one hand, and like a Faceless on the other hand for 3 mana, or like a Prince Taldarum, right? And so we're finally getting some more Beast Druid and Hunter support, which is awesome. And it's a pretty powerful card, right? So Keleseth on 2 is pretty busted, and so Keleseth on 3 is still, like, relatively good with a much less restrictive, deck building restraint. And so if you have this on 3 with a Keleseth effect, it's going to be super, super happy. It's going to be pretty strong. The ability to, like Prince Taldarum, or like Faceless rather, like a King Crush in the late game if you're a Reno Hunter in Standard, or Winged Guardian, I think it is for Druid, the 7-mana 6/8, can't be targeted taunt. The problem I'm seeing with this card is the fact that it's not a beast itself. So Beast Hunter is a lot more wary of running this card because it mucks with Master's Call. Yes, you can potentially tutor it with Master's Call, and you're happy still. I just think that Beast Hunter, it's not like an auto-include, because you're thinking about the deck building restrictions and Master's Call, and like, is it okay to risk it, or am I happy tutoring it and not drawing the other 2 cards? I think Beast Hunter is a lot more wary about just auto-including this in the deck. I think Beast Druid is very happy to see this, because Beast Druid needs a ton of support. I think this is a very good card. But Beast Druid is so far away from being playable that I think this is going to need, this archetype is going to need a lot more support in this expansion for Shando Wildclaw to see play in a Beast Druid archetype. It might see play in another version of Druid that I'm not really thinking about right now, something with like a Devilsaur OTK and cubes. I know that was running around in in Standard for a little bit. Maybe this support to Wild now. With this card, again, I think it's a very, very powerful card. I think this is one of those that's going to push archetypes. I just don't know if it's going to be enough to bring those archetypes into viability, though. The next legendary that we're going to talk about is Rattlegore. This is a 9-mana warrior card. 9/9, Death Rattle, resummon this with -1/-1, so it's going to come back as an 8/8, and then it's going to come back as a 7/7, 6. Basically, you can't get rid of it unless you polymorph it or psychic scream it or something like that. So it's a very unique card. It's probably strong in Recruit Warrior. The problem with this card is that it lacks taunt, right? It'd be OP if it had taunt. And so this is a very similar vein of like Colossus of the Moon for a Recruit Warrior deck, where it's really, really strong when you're cheating it out earlier against lower decks because they can't really remove it. It's very, very annoying, but it doesn't have taunt, so it's going to be very bad into the aggressive decks in the meta. And just a reminder, this is also going to be really, really bad off of Barnes, because Barnes summons a 1/1 copy of this, and so when the 1/1 dies, it's gone. Peace. So while I'm personally not a big fan of the big decks, I'm not super excited about this card, but if you're a fan of the big decks and you're looking to play Recruit Warrior, I think this will fit very nicely into that deck. Alright, let's talk about Wretched Tutor. This is a 4-mana neutral card, 2/5. Spellburst, deal 2 damage to all other minions. So this might be a fine control tools for Standard. I'm not terribly excited about this card, though. It feels like a weaker Flak Mage. The classes that you probably are going to utilize this in are Priest and Warlock, more than likely. I don't really think this card has a place in Wild, because those classes have much better AoE. You can think about maybe using this as an AoE card for classes that currently lack AoE, and so I'm thinking primarily about Hunter. The problem with this is like you're committing 4 mana for this 2/5, so it's not going to stick around more than likely, plus additional mana, so it's a very expensive board clear. It might see play in Reno Hunter because you don't have access to AoEs in general, but I'm not super excited about this. I don't think it's going to see play in Wild. One that I might try to fit into wild decks is Goody Two Shields. This is a 3-mana Paladin card, 4/2 with Divine Shield, Spellburst, gain Divine Shield. So this is an odd cost, aggressively set at 3-drop with Divine Shield and the ability to regain Divine Shield. That seems pretty good to me. I think the first place that we're looking at for this card, is Odd Paladin. So the question becomes, how easy is this to refresh the Divine Shield on this minion in Odd Paladin? So you have Blessing of Mites, Never Surrenders, Lost in the Jungle, Righteous Cause, Divine Favors. That's like 9 or 10 spells, depending on the list. So I actually think this has potential, because you're already playing a lot of Divine Shields with Righteous Protector and Steward of Darkshire, and then you run the 3-mana weapon that's escaping my mind right now. That buffs all your Divine Shield minions. And it's a sticky minion, which is what Odd Paladin really, really likes to see. It's aggressively statted. It's going to hit you in the face, which Odd Paladin likes to see. So I actually think this card has a lot of potential, and is something to keep in mind when you are, building your decks on Expansion Day. And another Paladin card that I think has a ton of potential, First Day of School. So it's a 0-mana Paladin spell, add 2 random 1-cost minions to your hand. So this is a card that doesn't seem super flashy on the surface, but has the potential to be super, super busted and wild. So you can imagine this card as a Firefly for the big Paladin deck. So it's a super big buff to the big Paladin decks because of Prismatic Lens, right? The ability to get a 0-mana big giant minion into play is pretty powerful. And you can use it as like a 0-mana, like I mentioned, like a Firefly, 2 decently statted 1-drops to help you fight for board against aggressive decks. I think this card has a ton of potential in Wild, and I think you guys, maybe we're entering the meta of big decks in Wild, with the Big Warrior and Big Paladin looking like they're getting a lot of support. So next up, we've got Troublemaker. This is an 8-mana warrior card, 6/8. At the end of your turn, summon 2 3/3 ruffians that attack random enemies. So the card that I want to liken this to is Nagrand Slam, with the potential for this to proc multiple times. However, with his mana cost and his stat line, I feel like it's going to be really difficult for him to stick multiple turns without the warrior dying in Wild. And without multiple turns, I just don't think this card is impactful enough, so I don't think this will see play. Alright, and next up we've got Diligent Note Taker. This is a Shaman 2-mana 2/3 with Spellburst. Return the spell to your hand. So this card seems absolutely nuts. Even Shaman has a few flex spots left in its deck list. And this is just one of those nice 2-drops that I think fits really, really nicely into what Even Shaman wants and allows for the deck to double up on Totem Buffs, Devolves, Portals, Crackles. And the fact that this is just 2 mana means that it's super easy to utilize the Spellburst effect, sort of what we were talking about at the very beginning of this YouTube video, unlike the next card we're going to talk about, which is pretty expensive. And Shaman has some pretty strong, cheap cards that you might want to double up on, right? So imagine double Devolving a threatening board, or double Crackling for lethal. If you top deck this in the late game, this might even find a spot in something like Evolve Shaman with double mutates, or evolves, or devolves. This is probably the strongest. It's going on a limb, but I think this, I guess Lightning Bloom. Never mind, I take it back. This is probably my favorite card. How about that? It's probably my favorite card that we've seen so far. Alright, next up we've got Onyx Mage Scribe. This is a neutral 6-mana 4/9. Spellburst, add 2 random spells from your class to your hand. So unlike Diligent Note Taker, this is really expensive, so you really need to pay the 6 mana and then have leftover mana that same turn, so you're really late in the game, or stick it at 6 mana and take advantage of its effect next turn. And then 6 mana 4/9 is not even that great stats, so it's going to be hard for it to stick around. And so while the upside might seem decent for something like Quest Mage or Arena Quest Mage, I just feel like it's too expensive and not, like, it's not giving you 1 mana spells like a Spellkin, right? It's giving you 2 random spells. So I am not a big fan of this card. Don't think it'll see play. And last but not least, we've got Transfer Student. This is the 2/2 neutral that everybody has gotten access to already, which has different effects based upon which board you're on. So spoiler alert for those that don't want to find out what this card does, and you're like on your own adventure, and you're determined to play on every board. So be it. Just a spoiler alert that I have to talk about these effects so that I can evaluate it. And this will be the last card that we're talking about, so don't worry about missing anything. Alright. Now that I've given my little spoiler alert, let's talk about Transfer Student, okay? Let's talk about all the possibilities and whether or not they're good. So first up, we've got give a minion +1/+2. Seems good. Gain Divine Shield. I'll pay 2 mana for a neutral mini bot. Seems good to me. Stealth Poisonous. It's good. Battlecry, deal 2 damage. Actually really good. Death Rattle, add a random Death Rattle minion to your hand. Not a big fan of that. Battlecry and Death Rattle, add a spare part to your hand. Very good. At the end of your turn, reduce the cost of a random card in your hand by 2. Very good. Inspire, draw a card. Pretty slow in any matchup that's not Yeah, not Reno Priest, right? Battlecry, discover a new basic hero power, seems pretty bad. Add a random weapon to your hand, seems pretty bad. Spend all of your mana, summon a minion of that cost, seems pretty bad. Add a random Karazhan portal to your hand, actually seems not that bad because it's buffs and it's life gain and it's damage, right? And the potential for some AoE. So I actually really like this Karazhan portal one. Give a random minion in your hand +2/+2. Potentially playable. Adapt, it's pretty good. Again, neutral 2-mana 2/2 with the potential to be a 2/5 or a 5/2 or Divine Shield or Stealth. Seems pretty good to me. Add a random Death Knight card to your hand. That's like the Lich King cards. You know, there's like a 4-mana 2/2 that has the same effect in Arthas. That's a legendary. Yeah, this one, really, really good. Recruit a minion that costs 2 or less. Very good. Echo Rush, really bad in the early game, pretty good in the late game. Taunt, Battlecry, if you have 10 mana crystals, gain +5/+5. Doesn't seem that good. Rush, Overkill, draw a card. At 2 attack, you're very rarely ever going to be overkilling anything with this, so not very good. Battlecry, add a lackey to your hand. Very, very good. We have a 2-mana 1/1 that does that. That's all out of play in Evil Cable Rat in Standard. Discover a Dragon. It's like the worst lackey option, but it's a 2-mana 2/2 lackey instead of a 1-mana 1/1 lackey that does that. Not too excited, but still playable. Dorm for 2 turns, and then deal 3 damage to 2 random enemies. This one's pretty underrated, but also super busted. Okay, so some of these options are pretty good. Others are passable, with a few being pretty bad. And overall, since most of these options are pretty good, and some of them passable, I think this actually might see play in Wild, as weird as that might sound, and definitely should see play in Standard. So my first instinct for this is Reno decks, like Reno Mage or Reno Priest, and maybe even Shaman, even Paladin, and kind of tempo-y mid-range decks similar to that. And so time will tell if this card is actually consistently good enough, which is weird to say because, you know, it's literally inconsistent. It's random based upon the board you're on. But a lot of these effects seem pretty good, and I'll be happy for a lot of them. But the problem is you're going to be really, really sad on some of those boards as well. But I think it's a really, really cool card. And it's been surprisingly good, the little that I've already played with it. And I think it has the potential to be a strong 2-drop in a lot of decks. And the fun factor is definitely there, if that's what you care about. Okay, so that's it. 15 cards down, 120 to go. Let me know in the comments below whether you agree or disagree with my evaluations of these cards. And let me know what decks that you're going to be trying them out in. And as we wrap up this video, just a reminder to subscribe if you guys enjoyed this video. And hit that little bell so you get notifications for future card reviews and potentially theory crafting videos. And not potentially, eventually, theory craft videos come out. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.